The last couple of days, it's been like 48 hours of call-outs. Let's start with George St-Pierre. George St-Pierre says he'd like to fight the winner of Khabib and Conor. Now, that's interesting for a couple of reasons. First off, fantastic fight. Yeah, of course. Huge fight. Yeah, of course. I think it would be huger should Conor win, and it was a Conor-George St-Pierre title fight. I also think that that's likely the only scenario where this fight happens. I think that George, I'm guessing here, I think that George likes that matchup better. I think he also understands the magnitude, and I think he understands the legacy. Here's the resistance to offer you the other side of this. On first glance, you're looking at it and go, well, yeah, of course, if you're Dana White, sign that fight. But there's a couple of moving parts because you are going to also understand that if George was to come down to 155 for a title fight, he's going to grab the belt and he's going to walk away. I don't have a big problem with that. I just know that some people do. And I think that bothers the UFC. I think for a fight of that magnitude, and somebody as upfront and open as George St-Pierre to say, look, here's what my goal is, whether I achieve it or not, this is what I'm going to try to do, I don't have a problem with it. I like the disclosure as a fan. It doesn't piss me off as a fan. Sometimes when I get blindsided by that or surprised, I feel a little bit duped, and I can be irritated by that. With George St-Pierre, he did that with Bisping. Dana insisted George would defend, but George was a little more straight up about it. As soon as he won the belt, it was within 2 weeks. He handed it back. Nobody else would ever hand a belt back. Ever. It's never happened. You wait until you're stripped. You run that. You run the promos. You run yourself with a belt. It helps your sponsorship money. It helps with attention. George St-Pierre handed it back. So I think that he would come to the table, and I'm guessing right now, I have no inside information, but I'm quite sure he would come to the table and say, yes, this is a one-off. I am doing this for legacy, and I'm doing it for championship. The other side of that, I think it's because it's for a championship is going to be one of the biggest things that delays it. I'm guessing that. I think that Dana White has played this perfectly in saying, no, there's no chance of that. Because even though he would have to be chomping at the bit with excitement over the opportunity, I'm just going to say Conor. I understand it was the win, and this isn't a slide Khabib. I just don't feel that George's sincerity is the same should Khabib win. My own personal guess. I think as much as Dana would have to chomp at the bit for a Conor versus St-Pierre fight, the unlikelihood of it happening adds to the fact that he needs to come out publicly and say, no, there's no chance of it, because he could demoralize the guys in the back. Particularly, say, a Dustin Poirier, who more than deserves a title shot. Particularly a guy like Tony Ferguson, who more than deserves a title shot. Could really demoralize some of those guys by letting them know, look, if we get a big star, he's going to come in and he's going to cut the line, but it's George St-Pierre, and that's just the way that it goes. So I kind of get that. I kind of like the speculation on it, but I also think, and the reason I bring it up to you guys isn't just to add speculation, there was something special about the fact, or at least unique, that George St-Pierre came out and said this. That's not really how he does things. George is kind of the last one to the table. He likes to be begged a little bit. He likes to be massaged a little bit. He likes to get the fan reaction. He likes that carrot dangled in front of his face when it's sit down and time to negotiate a contract. So he plays everything very close to the vest. But once he says, I want to do it, he goes and does it with no exception. So the fact that he's coming out now and saying, I want to do this. Also, if you look at George's body, he's leaned up. He's much smaller now than when he fought Bisping. He was eating like a pig. He was forcing himself to gain weight for that fight. So kind of like most guys that cut weight for a fight, you see him balloon up. When you see a guy that's bulking and all of a sudden, oh, great, I don't have to eat that 5th and 6th meal a day. They don't. The same way as the guys that go, geez, I'd sure like to have an extra couple of meals today. And then they do. He's smaller now. I've got no problem with the idea that he can make 155, and I only offer that to you because I heard some people say, well, he couldn't do it at 155. It'd have to be a catch weight, which means there's no title on the line. I totally disagree. In fact, I disagree that it would, to the exact opposite. It must be at 155, and there must be a belt up, or you're not getting George. There's even some discussion, just to add to my point of George's psychology, of George versus Anderson. I'm in for that fight. I do understand that it's too late. I do understand that it's not what it once could have been, but it's still huge, and it's still special, and it's still meaningful. But there's no title, which means there's going to be no George. It just simply isn't going to happen. So I had a lot of fun with that. I had a lot of fun with that, and I love the fact, and I would really like it if I was wrong and George was in either way, and he'll take on Khabib or he'll take on Conor, because then you could bring George to the show. Then you could do a face-off. Then you could run your promos and get everything going from there. There's a lot of things that need to happen for anything that I just talked about to actually come into place, but it's meaningful, it's topical, and it's worth mentioning, so I did.